Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. It's Jamie and Dara here again. Today we're going to be talking about the changes, the CA 2022 changes. So specifically the missions that have been previewed in the finale of the Roadshow, and also the secondary changes. We're going to do a little bit of speculation as well about some interesting things that have kind of shown up in these changes. And we're going to talk about how it affects the world leaders, like what units we may be taking, what units we might be dropping, and how our lists may change and evolve around those kind of things. So let's dive into it.
Dara, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Yeah, interesting times.
Yeah,
It seems like we've had a glut of kind of shakeups recently in the meta, which is obviously a really good thing,
yeah,
because it was pretty stagnant over the last, we'll say, 6 to 8 months. And now all of a sudden we're getting balanced data sheets, we're getting new missions, we're getting
yeah,
potentially point changes early next year,
yeah,
a whole line of new codexes. Like, to be honest, dude, it's pretty good vibe being in 40K right now.
yeah. It's definitely positive. The changes seem to be in the right direction. I don't. We're going to have to wait and see how they pan out. Obviously with the entire chapter approved release, because there's some things which look a bit not 100% sure on, but it is early. This is literally we're recording as the exhibition games are being played. So they're keep an open mind, but it is at least positive, like you say, the fact that there are things changing. Things are happening, like you say, the data sheet or the balance data sheet. Now these kind of like sneak peeks of what chapter approved is going to be. I don't know if we've had it confirmed, but I'm very almost certain that chapter approved will be like a January February release. I know. Was it this year that it was in the summer, early summer, where we got
Yeah, I think
21, like
I
May,
honestly can't
June?
remember. I know there was one at the very start of the year. I knew, and then there was. I can't remember if that was a points and FAQ, and then there was
Yeah,
the new mission pack in the summer. I think that might have been it. I again,
it's
I,
hard
I
to.
can't really
Well, with
remember.
eighth
Yeah,
edition, they made it like it was a January release. Chapter approved was every January, and then obviously ninth. As soon as ninth dropped, we got COVID and everything changed. So I think we got shifted back for one of the releases, but I would with this preview, I would very much expect early part of the year we're going to get something, even if it's just a mission upgrade, a mission pack upgrade, and not the points, or the other way round. Yeah. So why don't you kick us off with what we're going to talk about here?
yeah, cool. So we're gonna start with a little bit of speculation, rumors, theories, kind of, I suppose, stemming mostly from you and me and just like looking at a couple of things here, seeing some rumors going around
Yeah.
about, lore and sort of developments in the story of the game and potentially, where we could be seeing like the narrative taking place
Yeah.
and
Well,
as
and the
a
narrative it drives the releases in a way. You
exactly,
know.
yeah, like for example, we saw earlier this year when the data of secondary changed to retrieve Octarius data,
Mm-hmm.
and then we got the Octarius
Yep.
expansion. So we had the campaigns, we had Kill Team, Decor of Krieg, the Orcs, everything like that. It was all those releases were essentially focused around Octarius, which is
Yeah.
cool, to have releases driven by a narrative element because like some people are really into the narrative of
Yeah.
the game and I totally vibe with that. So there's a couple of interesting things here that we can kind of pull on. And the first one is the fact that retrieve Octarius data is changing. We're gonna dive into how that's changing later on in the video,
Yeah.
talk about our thoughts on it and everything. But it's changing to retrieve Nockmund data, I believe. Now, for anyone who can't remember or doesn't know, the Nockmund Gauntlet is the passage through the Great Rift,
Yeah.
where Vigilus is located. And as we all know from Eighth Edition, Vigilus was when things really kicked off for the Chaos Space Marines.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
it's when we got the Chaos Rumor Engine, we got a Baden, we got the entire range refresh, which was outstandingly good, and some cool lore developments of like, you know, we had Marneus Galgar crossing the Rubicon, all those sort of cool
Yeah.
things happening.
We got the host
And
raptorial. That's
yeah, we got it
we
was
got
awesome.
6-inch charges. That's
And
all I care.
Soul Forge back and everything. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it was dope, and like fantastic new models like the Master of Possession
Yeah.
and all the Vanguard Space Marines, which was great. So the fact that the secondary is changing to be called Retrieve Nockmun data, and I might be incorrect on it because I wasn't watching the stream, but I believe when they were talking about it on the stream, they sort of hinted that it's a sign of things to come, which leads me to believe that the Nockmun sector is going to see a campaign book next year.
I
Now,
can see that.
if the Nockmun sector is getting a campaign book, we can pretty much infer that Chaos are going to be vibing around there because they love that little part of the world. And kind of tying into all of it, when you look at the PDF for these new missions that they released on Warhammer Community, the first picture for the US Open 2021 finals is some fresh artwork of none other than Abaddon the Despoiler.
Yes.
So, I mean,
He's
as I
looking
was saying,
pretty hench.
yeah, like as I was saying to Jamie, he's been packing on the Chaos Pounds. You know,
Yes.
he's looking cool. Like the Talon of Horus looks sick in that
Yeah.
image. You know, it's like properly like real big Primarch weapon. So it's kind of all coming together here. I'm like, all right, what's up with this fresh art, this mentioning of the Nockmun Gauntlet? And it got me thinking about the old rumors and what is speculated to be coming out next year, which is a lot of sort of mortal followers for Chaos, right?
Yeah.
And that's really, really interesting because where Vigilus left off, like Chaos was sort of beaten back, but the planet was ravaged. Now I'm starting to wonder, are we going to see uprisings on the planet from the mortals? Like we are hearing rumors about traitor guards, so are the regiments going to start to turn? We're hearing rumors about like mutants, humans, and I'm wondering, is that because they're so close to the Great Rift and all these things? So I'm really thinking that it's sort of starting to hype up, and then we've got all this stuff coming out about the Eldar versus Chaos box set. It's really starting to come together. You know, the ball has been rolling quite slowly for the last couple of months, but I think it's starting to pick up a lot of momentum now. Yeah, what do you think, Jamie?
Oh, I agree. Well, once you mentioned that before we started recording, it did click. I'd thought about the Nockmun snippet, and it was kind of floating around, but I didn't really put it all together. But it does kind of make sense based on the rumors, or the leak rumors, whatever it was, that have been almost 100% correct in the information, if not in the exact timing so far. And we know this is going to be a year for Chaos. We don't know exactly when it's going to really kick off. We don't know, Codex release dates. We're not 100% sure if we're definitely going to get a World Eaters Codex, for instance. But we know things are going to happen. And I think we're looking at a 95% certainty, really, for, Traitor Guard, the mutants, some kind of like Lost and Damned Codex or supplement. It could be in a, Vigilus 2.0 type deal. Now, whether they go in the crunch direction that Vigilus did, I hope they don't introduce specialist detachments unless it's armies of renown, but for everyone who doesn't already have an army of renown. Because, as far as the rules go and the game, and we're talking about competitive or narrative or just a friendly game, there's some armies that don't need a hand up right now. They just don't. But there's quite a few that could use it. Obviously ourselves included. So just looking at it from that point, with the indication that it's going to be Chaos themed, at least the baddie half is going to be Chaos themed. We know we're getting a big Eldar dump pretty soon. Presumably around Christmas, maybe just after. I think that they tend to drop their box sets in like the end of January. When they do their start of the year, it's normally January, early February, something like that. Like that was when they released the Helverins, the Armigers. They came out in one of the boxes, and then a few of them have dropped like that. So it's hard to tell, But I think the narrative clues you've mentioned, the Nachmund, and then Abaddon, they've dedicated new art to Abaddon. We're getting chaos stuff. It's
Yeah.
happening. Dates we don't know, but I think we'll start off. I think the first major release of 22, box wise, models wise, is probably going to be chaos themed, and I hope so.
Yep.
Chaos versus Eldar, if it's true. I know there's been some videos talking about it recently. I'm okay with that. I'm definitely okay with that.
Yeah, and I mean, the recent Octarius campaign book even had lore of Elder Rangers engaging Khorne world leadery sounding dudes,
Yeah.
and I've heard rumors of a kill team box of Elder Rangers and some world leader stuff, so could
Ooh.
be a double drop, you know, you never know. They could
That.
really hardcore focus and like to
Yeah.
be honest, like I'm living with someone who collects Eldar, so I'm gonna buy the crap out of those boxes.
If we get, like Berserkers or anything remote, hell, even if it's just generic Chaos Space Marines, but they look cool, or it's like the Chosen kit or
Hmm.
something like that, I'm gonna buy several boxes. I
Yeah.
love me some kit bashes. I love the new sculpts, and we're playing 40k. Like, money doesn't mean anything to us. It's as long as we get the new boxes to unpack and everything, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, cool. So that's our little speculation part done. We're gonna dive into the competitive sort of aspect of it now, the part that probably most of you are here to listen to us ramble
Yeah.
about. So I'm going to cover some of the two missions that we've seen previewed first, how they're changing, sort of the direction that the overall theme of competitive missions seems to be going and changing to. We're going to talk about kind of what we think about it, if it's good, if it's bad, our kind of our opinions in general. So let's start with number one, which is secure missing artifacts. So this is very, very similar to it was priority mission, right? Was the old
Priority
one?
targets, yeah.
Priority
Mission
targets, yeah.
33, yeah.
So, from what we've seen from this and from Recover the Relics, which is the other mission, it seems that there is going to be a unique mission rule to each mission.
Yeah.
And I am curious about these because I think the balance within missions is going to be key as to the viability of all of them. And so for this one, it's actually a carbon copy of how it used to be, where essentially you and your opponent get to move your objective markers 6 inches before the game kicks off.
Yep.
Which is, that's fine. We've been
Yeah.
playing with that for a good while. No big changes there. And obviously, where the real changes are coming in here is how the primary is being scored. So,
Yes.
kind of swinging back to what I would say is closer to the old ITC system. So we're looking at hold 1, hold 2, hold more, and you get 4, 8, and 12 for each of those.
Yeah.
So there's a bit more granularity, I suppose, in the scoring in terms of you don't necessarily you're not getting 5, 10, and 15 each time, which is, in my opinion, a good thing because the volume of points you can score from the primary was a bit
It was very
much.
advantageous for some armies.
Yeah,
It was
yeah. Like if
non-interactive.
if you're bringing a list that can really push for primary, you're automatically going to be, at quite a good kind of position.
Yeah.
So making it 4, 8, and 12 is cool, I think, and making it hold 1, hold 2, hold more is fine as well. And we still have the sort of rule where whoever goes second gets to score at the end of the final turn, which is a fantastic rule. Like, honestly, one of my favorite changes that they've made to the system so far. And so aside from that, it seems that each mission is now going to have an additional primary sort of mission or like objective as such. So in this one, it's precious artifacts is what it's called, and that is basically at the end of each player's turn. You score an extra 3 victory points if you hold a priority objective marker in their own territory. So that is really similar to what it used to be for the mission specific, I think. It was like 3 and 5.
And 5 if
I
you
think.
held your opponents as well.
Yeah. So obviously your opponent picks which priority objective it's going to be, but they have to pick one in your half. They're probably going to pick the one that isn't in your deployment zone, and you're probably going to pick your opponent's one. But you just play it smart and you try and move that one back towards your deployment zone, is I think how it goes.
Hold on a sec. No, you can pick. Oh yeah, it does. It's changed to within their opponent's territory. Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
missed
It
that
used to
that
be it
line.
used to be
Used to be you
different. Yeah,
pick your own and it was auto 15. So
yeah. Yeah,
okay,
so I mean, look, it's cool that they're introducing sort of mission-specific primary scoring. Like I was talking about this with some of the guys, and we were kind of saying that like there wasn't a crazy amount of individuality between missions before. It was sort
yeah,
of like they were very, very similar to each other. But now with a specific mission rule and a specific mission primary, you're going to actually start to see a lot of individuality coming through, which is good, provided the balance between them is good,
yeah.
and is sort of the external balance of those rules and those primaries not favoring any side too much kind of matches up as well. So I think there's a lot of tough balance that sort of goes into that. But yeah, like what do you think, Jamie?
So my first thoughts on the new structure. I won't talk about this mission specifically so much. You can still score the primary over 4 rounds of the 5 round game. You can't score in the first round, which is the same. So you can still. We don't know the core rules change. We're only seeing the mission rules. But assuming the core rules, the way that primaries and secondaries are scored, capping at 45 each and 10 battle ready, which we don't know yet, you can still max out your primary score over 4 rounds and not touch the primary. It's the mission secondary, which is now a primary objective. It's like an optional thing, as far as we know. So the math has changed in how long you have to survive because, currently you can max out your primaries in 3 rounds. By the end of round 4, you could have maxed your primary, which gives you a bit of freedom to then be more aggressive on your opponent to
Yeah,
make sure they can't score at the end of the round, or in round 5. Now you can sort of start a bit slower and still catch up, but the acceleration is reduced. It's a cagier game. I think there's going to be a lot more. The biggest adjustment is being able to know how to run your army over 5 rounds and not over
exactly.
committing too early or not holding back till too late. You need to be scoring decent in every round, which that's common sense. Of course, you want to be scoring well, but I think when you throw in list composition, that's where you get the art of it. An army like Knights, for instance, they're going to have to try and score well early because once they start losing those assets, they're not going to be able to catch up in the later game just by virtue of being outnumbered. Even when they count for 10 models, one model can only hold one objective, so they're kind of shit out of luck. Similarly, slow armies, your Deathwing, your Death Guard, and so on, are going to want to make sure they're scoring high and doing what they can to reduce their opponent because it's going to take them longer traditionally to cross the board and flip those enemy objectives. Like, it's going to be hard for Death Guard to score precious artifacts. I guess, of course, lists will develop and change, but if we look at the archetype of a Death Guard army, they generally don't cross the battlefield in the first couple of turns unless their opponent gives them free charges, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, the meta change to how we score and how that influences our list building is, for me, the biggest thing. Now, I do like the change, and I'm glad you made me double check the reading there for precious artifacts because it is the opponent's territory, which I just missed. Because priority targets was everyone gets 15 points, and unless you're absolutely stomped. This is interesting because, for instance, for us, for World Eaters players who traditionally don't have much longevity, we gas cannon in, we kill, and if we do well, we survive. But normally we don't. We fall over to smites and bolt of fire, right?
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting how we manage our army on the field to try and capitalize on this precious artifacts, because we want to be aggressive. We typically want to be in the enemy's DZ, so we've got to get our psychology right on things like this, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, like you put it really well, where it's like overall how it kind of alters the composition of lists is going to be it's going to be quite influential. I think like the lack of obviously like the sort of mission specific secondaries kind of going away now. Like that's like obviously going to affect a lot of things, you
Yeah,
know. And
that
changing to
really does
this,
hurt.
yeah, it does because a lot of the time it's challenging to pick a third secondary, and sometimes the mission one helps out there. So yeah, let's move on to recover the relic. So I when I saw the title of this, I nearly got a heart attack because I don't know if you remember the relic from the old missions, like where you have this one objective that you kind of like throw
Oh
around the
yeah.
board and share. Man, when I saw recover the relic, I'm like, no, it can't be coming back. Like, please say it ain't so. So thankfully, it's not. However, I am not really a fan of this mission for a couple of reasons. I
Yep.
This is where I start worrying about the internal balance between the missions because I think
Yep.
this one is I kind of like I'm like, oh, I
Are
see
you
what they're
playing
going for.
Ultramarines on this mission? Did you just want to win the game?
Yeah, literally, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So the mission specific rule is recover relics. So what that basically means is you only receive your Battleforge CP, which is your 1 CP at the start of the
Yep.
round, if you control either one or more objectives in the opponent's territory or one or more objectives in no man's land. So you have to stick on an objective for the entire enemy turn in the middle or in the opponent's zone if you want to get your CP.
Yep.
Then, in addition, if you are holding an objective marker in your opponent's deployment zone, I don't really understand why they didn't just say your opponent's territory again because it's the same thing, I
Yeah.
guess. But okay, you receive an additional command point, so you could potentially be getting two CP around if you are
Yeah.
somehow managing to hold in your opponent's deployment zone, which is, as world leaders, quite unlikely.
Yeah.
So that's the mission rule, which already I'm not a fan of
Yep.
because I don't like CP throttling, and
Yep.
that's kind of what that says to me. And as playing an army that has a tough time hanging around in the midfields, because like typically world leaders will flip an objective for their round, but
Yeah.
then lose it
And
in the
then lose
seeding
it
round.
right again. Yep.
I'm kind of like, oof, how much CP are we going to kind of hemorrhage there? So you have the standard, hold one, hold two, hold more, which is fine. They scored 4, 8, and 12 again. That's just the new way of it. Then we have the mission sort of primary specific thing, which is break them body and soul. Really cool name. And that's basically score a victory point for each enemy unit that was destroyed during that battle round to a maximum of 3. So that is going to be 3 victory points if you kill 3 enemy units. And I'm not really a big fan of these kind of point scorers because I'm kind of like, you're killing your opponent anyway.
Yeah.
Why do you need more points for that? You know, like it's just sort of one of those things where I'm like, well, you're just playing the game as you would have played it anyway, but now you're getting points for it.
I think it does add a little bit of subtlety for very strong players. We're
Yeah,
talking, we're talking the kind of people that are playing this mission right now as we talk. They're going to know, okay, I kill these 3 this turn, and next turn I'll kill those 3, and that'll give me 98 points to win, right? Or whatever. For us, we, especially playing World Eaters or anyone playing 8th edition codexes, right, we don't generally have the luxury of being able to, because we either have to kill an alpha target, or we have to do as much damage as possible just so their return fire, their counter charge, their counter offensive doesn't wipe our army. Because we're very susceptible to being wiped in round 1. If the opponent
yeah,
is fast enough, we suffer. I mean, and that's not player failing generally. That's not failing to screen. Vanguard Vets or Blood Angels, if they get first turn, or your AdMech Flyers when they're a problem, they get first turn, it's game over for a Chaos Space Marine player, generally. However, I do kind of like this progressive objective in the way that we at least have a chance, because we're good at killing. I mean, if we can get into combat, we're going to get kills. So we're going to get some points. The problem is, so's our opponent, because we die so easy. And like I kind of joked at the beginning, like this mission for Ultramarines especially, and I'm sure there's a couple other sub-factions that get pre-game moves, Raven Guard, pre-game moves, they can redeploy 3 units, so they just infiltrate and completely screen you out, so you can't, like us as World Eaters, Against anyone else, we can forward move onto objectives, so we get our CP, right? Because in round 1, if we go first, we can just put our Raptors on an objective in the command before the command phase, and we get our CP. Ultramarines are just going to zone us out. We're not going to be able to do that because we have to be 9 inches away, and then they'll just redeploy, or do whatever they need to do to stop us from doing what we want to do.
Yeah, like my thing is like this sort of mission rule, it almost like forces you to use apoplectic frenzy on a unit of cultists, at which point I'm like, well, so I spent a CP to move guys onto an objective, so I get a CP, so it's like, okay, why did I bother doing that, and then it's like, obviously you're like, well, that's like a net zero, so I'm not going to do that, I guess.
Your Raptors and your Warp Talons, things that you are going to aggressively, like if you do that, you are going to push them forward for either a rod or R&D. We can't call it rod anymore. That sucks.
R&D now. It just doesn't sound good.
We're Knockman. But, our Raptors and our Warp Talons, we are going to push them 9 inches forward when we're able. So we may as well put them on an objective, because then we score the CP and then we can move our 12 inches to do what they actually want to do.
It's an interesting one. Like my thinking on it is actually, so I was considering this mission and kind of like lists that I would write around it and stuff, and more recently, especially after my last tournament, which really didn't go well, I've kind of been thinking about running 2 squads of Warp Talents and kind of seeing how that goes. And now I'm kind of like, one thing you could do is you could actually cluster both squads on the enemy zone objective. Okay. So you like hard push with apoplectic frenzy in the first turn, and charge and basically kill everything on that objective and mob it. And like then your opponent is going to have to be like, okay, I really have to kill both these squads or they're going to get even more CP because you're getting that bonus one for holding it. So you are forcing them to say, okay, I have to kill these like 16 Warp Talons. And I'm kind of like, okay, if they kill something in the first turn, I'm definitely popping that strat for like they're all fearless. And then I'm like, y'all just stick around, hopefully live. If one guy lives and he's somehow holding that objective, happy days. But I am like immediately forcing my opponent to be like, you have to deal with this. I am presenting something that literally cannot be ignored. So I'm kind of like, all right, that's pretty interesting. So like I don't really hate it. I think it's just an annoying one for like, it's not a bad rule, I don't think, but it's like you say, when it comes to 8th edition codexes that lack the inherent durability that a lot of the newer armies have, it makes it very difficult to get your CP at the start of each turn, which is really annoying because like that for the 8th edition codexes, CP often fuels their ability to actually play the game. So I wonder how much does this mission actually really hurt 8th edition books, and I think quite a bit more than other missions we've seen, which is kind of troubling. Like you have to consider like builds like Death Guard and Deathwing that are going to read this mission, and like, so the first one we went through, it's kind of like, ooh, that mission sucks for them, but now this one is kind of like, that really plays into their hands quite well, because first of all, they're going to bring big blocks of squads. You're probably not getting Break Them Body and Soul for max points every turn because they're going to have really tough units that are going to be hard to break down. Like in what world are you killing 3 Death Guard units a turn unless you're already winning the game, right? Or like they're bringing like, I don't know, squads of cultists or something crazy. Like it's going to be, and same with Deathwing. Like, are you picking up 3 Terminator squads a turn? If you are, you're winning. It doesn't matter, So it's going to be tough to score against them. But then conversely, you look at something like the Dark Eldar, which brings so many small units, and you're like, oh boy, I'm getting those 3 points a turn. That's not going to be a problem. So it's an interesting mission. I think in a way, it's good because it presents a lot of new and unique challenges to us, and like dealing with challenges is good. It's always something that fuels sort of innovation, new lists, new ideas. It freshens the game up. Like we always need to be challenged. We need to be presented with a problem that has to be overcome. And I think this mission specifically, Recover the Relics, poses some tough problems for us. And I'll be really curious to kind of see how we evolve to adapt to the new types of missions. It's going to be really hard to bring tack lists now because I think the missions are going to, like, if you're like, oh, I've built like this list to play Recover the Relic really well, but then it's not going to play some of the other ones really well, it's going to be cool, right? And then you have like really interesting like granularity again, where you'll have situations where you'll have armies that are really good at playing a certain subset of the missions, but
Hmm.
less so against the others. So it's really like I think overall the sandbox is really opening up again, which is awesome. But yeah, it'll be. I'm really interested to see the rest of the missions in this
Oh
pack.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because we should have at least another 7 missions to go along with this. And if
Fingers crossed, the scouring is even worse. I really hope. You know what I hope? I hope it's like the scouring, but with the old rules for the relic inside it. So you have to like bring an objective marker around the board.
what I hope is the deployment zone. It's not a red and a green. It's whatever color red and green make as a circle in the middle, and you just deploy, and it removes you can't be within 90. It's just a coliseum. That's what I
Yeah,
hope
yeah,
the scout.
just a death trap. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
just
You know, like those crazy narrative missions that are in the book, and it's like the two deployment zones are right in front of each other. It's
yep,
like, I guess I can start like an inch away from you.
yeah, exactly, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, but yeah, that's kind of like hot takes on the new missions. It's definitely going to fuel a lot of change for our lists. I've already been thinking about so many ways I'm going to change my list,
Yeah.
and this is kind of like really nicely like playing into some of the changes I'm thinking about. So I'm pretty happy
Okay.
because I think the new army I'm currently writing is going to play these missions better than I played the old ones.
Okay.
From what we've seen so far, which
Yeah.
is just a glimpse, yeah, it's going to be super interesting to be honest.
Well, let's touch briefly on the new secondaries. I'm going to
Yeah,
bring
let's
up
do that.
the Reddit post because that's really the best information we've got. Because we obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, there's a couple exhibition games going on at the Warhammer Citadel in Texas this weekend. It's like the finals for the US Open Series. And they're doing a couple of exhibition matches previewing these new rules. And they're demonstrating, I believe, 3 of the new secondaries, which is a new version of No Prisoners, which apparently just has a slight change. There's an extra couple VP for killing certain brackets of models. Retrieve Knockman data, which is Rod, which has had a pretty significant change. Okay, I'm gonna. The biggest change is now when you do it, it's you roll a d6 and you have to roll under the number of models in your squad. But if you're a troops unit, you subtract 1. So a unit of 5 Chaos Space Marines are always, if there's 5 in the squad currently, they're always gonna succeed at rodding. Okay, a squad
Yeah,
of 10
it's
cultists
sorry,
will
it's
succeed.
equal to or under, right?
Oh, is it
It's
equal
not
to?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Like that's what I'm
equal to
wondering.
or under. Yes.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So 5
Yep.
Marines is with the -1 will succeed as long as they have the troops roll. So World Eaters Berserkers MSUs are still on the table. Now, obviously, your casualties play into that because if you lose 1, it's the number of models in the unit, not that you started with. So you lose a Berserker, a 6 will now fail for you, and so on. So you either need to do it while they're still at full health, preferably, or maybe bring slightly larger squads, which I'm going to talk about in a second. There was another change I read, which I can't actually. Oh yeah, here it says bikers and characters can now rod, which is interesting. Characters especially, maybe not so much for us, but there are some that would like to do that.
I'm kind of like, oh, great, a character can do it, and they have to roll a 1.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there'll be like a different rule for them or something. I'm guessing. I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe. I mean, I'm also kind of like, I'm fine if there isn't, because it's like,
Yeah,
it's one of those like last ditch things where you're like, okay,
yeah,
I
that's
have to
true.
go for this rod, and I have to, like, if you have no other option, it's kind of cool that they can.
Yeah,
I'm also thinking of like, what is it, the Warlock Conclave, which are both bikers and characters.
yeah, okay, yeah,
And you could bring like 10 of them, and they're just going around doing rod and
yeah,
nothing else.
yeah.
That would be
It's a
funny.
fair play.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
like you can get squads of characters, right? Like the Tanith guys can do it. I think that's
yeah,
a squad of
I think so. I
characters.
think they're all characters.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I assume you are delighted that bikers can now do
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because I do love my bikers. You do need, ideally you want a squad of 6, and the problem is with 14-inch move, they're only doing your home territories, your home quadrants, unless you're playing sweep and clear in round 1, because you can't forward deploy bikers, and obviously if you advance, you can't do an action.
So if they're wait, they move 14, right?
Yeah. And
If
you
you
have to
de-
be 6 inches inside. So
yeah.
unless you've got a 12-inch no man's land, and most 18 is the smallest no man's land.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
see
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Of course. Yeah, I
So
do.
you could
Yeah.
advance in there to like move block and then do it on your next turn, but you'll suffer casualties. Like
Yeah.
they will whittle those bikes down. So, but it is nice to have because they can do it in turn one if you want. It's an option. I already like bikes, not competitively. I just want them to have something more. But now, okay,
Yep. Yep.
it's an option. Like you said, it's a clutch moment. If you've got 3 or 4 bikes and you've managed to get them where they need to be, hiding somewhere, why not give them a rod? I mean, it's something.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
I mean, personally, I'm actually like, okay, again, this is one of those ones. While the secondary change hurts us, in that like it does inhibit some of our kind of units that love
Yeah.
doing it, like namely the Dark Disciples. Pour one out for the boys. R.I.P.
Oh,
We'll miss
man,
them.
yeah.
It's sad. It's super sad. But it's
Very
fine because we can get them to do other secondary action things, right?
Yeah.
There'll be something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like the thing is, right, Rod was not just too easy for us, it was too easy for everyone.
Yeah.
Like Rod was an auto take, and like secondaries that are auto takes are bad inherently for the game. They are just bad. Like I never like thought about my secondary choices for the most part when I'm going into games. I'm like, I'll always take Rod, I'll always take Engage, and that's boring. So I'm really glad to see it change. Like, you have to think about it now and be like, okay, like obviously I'll probably have 2 squads of cultists that will just automatically get it in my own zone. That's totally fine. If I'm bringing them for that, that's cool. If I'm bringing Raptors now, it's a little bit of a gamble. Now, not a huge one. It's like, okay, there's like a 1 in 6 chance they don't do their Rod. So
I think you just bring the 6th Raptor and you deep strike them.
Yeah, and most of the time I was already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to fail that one.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't want to leave it up to chance, but statistically, you are unlikely to fail it anyway.
But you know what they say, like
Yeah, I mean, right? You can also consider like bringing squads of Chaos Space Marines and outflanking them for however many, like 1 CP, like just a 5-man squad pops up. Hey, we're doing Rod, or like I think it was you that mentioned it, where it's like 5 berserkers hopping out of a drill. They can Rod. So it's cool that you have this innovation of like, okay, Rod is still good, but now we have to think about how it's scoring differently. What units are maybe better, what units are worse. So I like it because now I'm having to consider Rod as a potential secondary that I will or won't take rather than being an auto take. So fantastic. I'm happy about it. I'm sad for the Dark Disciples, but I'm happy for the game.
Yeah, like we was talking about in Discord, so it's changed the internal balance for World Eaters specifically. It's changed the internal balance exactly like you said. Dark Disciples are no longer the best unit in the Codex. They're still pretty damn good, but they're no like. I mean, I know that's a bit of a meme, but because they were so efficient at doing that. Now, as far as we know, banners will stay the same and things like that. So they'll still have a role. They still are an easy way to get one of your engaged quadrants and stuff. But it does improve Marines and Bikers and cheap characters. Your Great Possessed, your Master of Executions, Exalted Champion, things like this. The only thing is, like with characters especially, is like you lose the aura when you're performing an action. So I think it better enhances the Master of Executions, but even better enhances the Warpsmith. Because if you bring the cheat, like you don't give them the second melter, and assuming there is some kind of way you don't have to roll a 1, like it's like a 4-up or something like that. The Warpsmith's special ability, like either heal or deal a mortal wound to an enemy vehicle, it's not an aura. You can still do it at the end of the movement phase and complete an action. So, it's not like the Warpsmith's great, but I've considered him a few times. If you're running a lot of skulls,
I've thought about him a few times as well.
It's not bad. Yeah. Having that option for D3 healing as the only healing we have outside of like Infernal Regeneration and things, it's not bad.
Yep.
It's a choice. If you're looking for that something, your reserve Rod unit, Warpsmith ain't going to kill you. But yeah, like Dark Disciples are down. Now, Chaos Space Marines are better, but I still think Cultists are just much better. For this specific example.
like literally one thing you can do now to overcome the fact that your Dark Disciples can't, pop up in the enemy DZ anymore. Literally just get them to do R&D in one quarter in your home turf, and then just tide them over into your
Yeah.
opponent's one. It's the same CP. Like the
That's
Disciples cost you a CP. I like pretty much. I rarely ever actually did the Disciple play. Most of the time, I just tided a unit of
yeah.
cultists because I'm like, it's just
Oh
easier.
yeah, yeah. I don't. Yeah, I
Yeah.
tried it once and and it didn't go well because I didn't. I got the strategic reserve wrong, but yeah, like my initial thoughts are two squads of cultists, probably 10, but maybe going up to 15, just depending, or whatever, and one squad of 6 raptors,
Yep.
maybe bumping that up, but I don't want to bump it up too much. That gives you, assuming you're not facing, whirlwinds on the other side, you're going to get your home rods. You'll probably get the raptor rod because round 3 and 4 you'll find a hole for them hopefully, and then you've got your tide for the 4th one. And
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
with
For
more
sure.
options, with your bikers and characters being able to do it, if your cultists get blown off the board, whatever. Plus, you can get 3 squads of 10 cultists in strategic reserve for 1 CP. So, you know,
Yep.
if you've got the points and the CP, that's another option, and you'll get 3 of the quadrants almost certainly. So,
Yeah, so we have options, which is great.
yeah,
Yeah, like it's cool. I think that change compounding with the mission changes is really driving a lot of what will be new innovation once the book comes out and we kind of digest the whole thing. To me, currently, it's kind of looking like world leader lists might start to tailor more towards a sort of infantry heavy archetype, I think, which is kind
yeah,
of cool. At least personally, that's where it's going for me anyway. I'm starting to move away from dreads and those
yeah.
kind of things. Sad to say it,
I've
but
already dropped my dreads. Like even
yeah,
before I knew about any of these rumors, and like for
yeah.
other reasons, I still think they're good. Um, but yeah, I
I am kind of starting to lean into the mindset of, I guess, somewhat of an older 8th edition kind of
I saw you talking
list.
about that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, of just how many berserkers can we get down here, you know? Like personally, I think what I'm going to be playing around with for a while is 4 5-mans and 2 8-mans.
wow, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a bold
And
move, Con.
then bringing a patrol with cultists in it. Yeah,
Wow,
so
okay,
it's actually a really big change for me.
yeah,
But yeah, just and then the 2 Warp Talent squads are going to be in there as well because I really think, especially seeing the changes we're getting, 2 Warp Talent squads are kind of good now.
hmm
Well, obviously they're always good, but there's too many times in games where I've been like, damn, I'd love another Warp Talent squad.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
I hear
so
you.
I'm leaning it, but then again, you don't want to go too MSU with these guys because then you're going to be giving up the
Kill
you
3.
know break them body and soul. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then again, you're giving that shit up anyway
but
because
that's
like
only
yeah, we're one weird Chaos
that's
Marines,
only
right?
one
So
game out of 9 where you're going to
yeah,
give that up.
yeah,
I think there's too much focus on not giving up either mission secondaries or
hmm
general secondaries. Like everyone was, or a lot of people are still saying, "Oh, we mustn't take psychers because of that Thousand Sun secondary." Um, obviously, it's not a problem for us, but like if someone had a thing where it's like, "Oh, we get 5 VP for every named character we kill," or something like that, I'm still going to bring Khorne if I want Khorne in my list
yeah, right.
because I'm only going to face that army, say, 1 in every 10 games. Then in that game that I do face them, they've actually got to actively try and kill Khorne or your Psyker or whatever it is. So I don't think you necessarily need... You don't want to give away 20 points to bring it down unless you're playing Knights or something, right? But, don't worry too much. I don't think, like you say, we fall down. We get side down and cut down easily enough anyway.
I don't really think there's a way to build a world leaders list that doesn't give up break them body and soul
Yeah,
unless you literally just bring dreadnoughts,
yeah,
which is cool.
yeah, but
Or 3 Lords of Skulls, in which case,
yeah,
if they score
but you're
break them
giving up
body and
Titan
soul,
Hunter then, so
yeah, I mean, right? So like
yeah,
you can never write the perfect list as an old 8th edition book,
yeah,
unfortunately. But like this is cool, it's going to be real fresh. There are going to be a lot of changes to how we write our lists. I think my old list archetype, just reflections on a recent tournament I was at, I think it's kind of dead in the water because I
right,
learned real hard if I don't get my average dice, like if my dice are a little below average and I bounce, it is game over immediately.
Yeah.
I had a terrible, terrible time, when that happened.
I th- I think that's what all we can play with at the moment, though, man. Because whether we're talking about like Mark playing or Jack or any of our other players, in the Discord talking about playing games, yourself, myself. If we don't roll average, we suffer, and that's not complaining. Oh, like salty chaos players. It's just the nature of the game. It's your Tau, it's your Eldar, it's your Chaos Space Marines. Other than custodies, I'd say anyone who's currently playing with an 8th edition codex feels that, because we don't have the 9th edition resilience that everyone else has got in some way or other. So yeah, once we bounce,
it's over.
Yeah, once you don't,
Yep.
once you roll 51 dice into a squad of Grey Knight Terminators and only kill one after spending 3 or 4 CP.
Yeah, I literally had that. It was against
Yeah.
Deathwing Knights. I
Yeah.
killed 3 out of 5. I was like, really? Really? I put that much damage down, and I did all the CP. To be fair, I put like 40 something saves on him, and he passed like all but like 12. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. If your dice are that hot, I'm like, all right, cool.
Oh man, yeah.
on 4-up saves as well.
But that's the
yeah,
thing.
it's stuff like that where it's like it's out of your hands. So
We
the
don't
way
have the
I'm
mitigation.
I'm swerving around it. I'm like, all right, how many dice can I dump on the table?
Yeah,
And that's lots of berserkers and lots of warp talons, Yeah, so that's kind of where my head is at. And obviously driving changes, especially when it comes to the new missions, it kind of like leans better into that kind of list anyway. Like reduction of variability is always a big thing. Like I just found out with my Leviathans, like they played really well for me at Coventry, and then when I went to GailCon, man, it was so weird. So many times in combat, they rolled like 4 ones out of their 5 attacks. It was like uncanny how many times that happened, and it's just like when they bounce, you're like, well, shit, that's like 220 points. That's like firing rubber bullets, or like has a big like boxing glove instead of a siege drill or whatever. So yeah, like I mean, it's a bit knee-jerky of me to change my list as hard as I have, but I'm also like, look, I've been playing with this same list for like 6 months. I want to freshen it up because I kind of got bored of lists really fast, and now I'm like, I've done the dread thing for a long time. I'm doing something else now for a while, and I'm just going to dump as many infantry dudes on the board, be it berserkers, chosen, talons, raptors, whatever. They're all coming in. I'm even bringing back the rhino. It's an OG time that's happening right now. Yeah.
Did you say you were going to drop the drills?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
No. No.
I thought about it.
I danced around the idea, and then I'm kind of like, they're just too good. They're just too good.
Well, like my current list, I'm only running one again. But if I swap it for a Dreadclaw, it really helps my list. But I don't want to swap it for a Dreadclaw.
I just think it's so good. Like, they're still like, yeah, sure, they're like 190 points of Volkite, but they just put in work. Like, everyone I go to a tournament, they're like, what does that do?
Well,
and everyone's like, damn, that did a lot of damage.
If they can kill Redemptor Dreadnought, they've traded. And they've delivered you Berserkers where you want your Berserkers. So, as long as you manage to actually get a target for them, I got you. But okay, man, I think that kind of sums up our thoughts and like our predictions and our thought process, I guess, for what we can learn from the information we've got so far regarding the new missions and everything else. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think, look, it's cool. I'm always happy to see change, be it, whatever kind of change in the meta, because like I love to keep things fresh. I believe that it won't be long before people start to really consider altering their world leader lists again. I'll be really interested to see what kind of, the regular competitive folks like Mark and Jack and all them and the rest of the team members and stuff kind of come up with in terms of like how they're going to pivot to meet these new challenges, because there's certainly going to be challenges. What we also need to keep in mind is that like we're probably not too far off from new rules for ourselves. Like I would imagine some form of codex is imminent in the nearer future than it has been before, we'll say. I reckon, like, if we start building and buying units based around kind of how to adapt and then we get dumped with a whole set of new rules pretty soon, it's going to be kind of feel bad. So
Yeah.
I would say, like, my advice for everyone is, like, look to your current collection and see how you can adapt that to better suit these new missions, rather than going out and buying, I don't know, 30 warp talons. They'll still probably be good in the new book, but you know.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I completely echo you there. However, my wife asked me yesterday what I want for Christmas, and I emailed her a link to a Greater Brass Scorpion. So
my hero. Let's go.
but yeah.
No,
I agree. All right. Well, yeah. That I think that sums it up for us. So yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed the video. Enjoyed listening to us kind of speculate and theorize and hypothesize on everything, and I guess we'll see in a month or two how incredibly wrong we were, right? I mean, we could just be talking completely out of our asses here. I don't know.
Nah,
I think
my head's in the warp. I know what's going on.
All right, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you soon. Stay healthy, stay safe, until next time.